Alright, so a couple weeks ago, the good friends at Banggood contacted me and asked me, hey, we see that you review a lot of cases. Would you be interested into look into this Coolman one? Quickly check out the website, and I was like, yeah, very interesting. I wanna see this case. Hey guys, welcome back to the How SS channel. My name is Ivan, and today we are going to look at this Coolman case that came all the way from Banggood, and we're gonna see if this case is a good buy for you. What are the features that nobody else has, and what are the negatives? Obviously, there will be negatives. I already seen some, even from the pictures on the website, but now we're gonna dig into details and see if this case is worth your hard-saved money. Let's get straight into it. So first thing first, the case comes in this pretty well packed, I guess. We'll see how the case is inside and what's the situation, but most of it is Chinese leathers all around. There's a small graphic of the case right here on the side, but I am going to go ahead and open it right away. And let me see what's the proper side up. I guess this is the proper side up. I'm gonna open it. Right on top, there's a pretty significant foam. Hopefully the camera can see it. See how it's packed. Very nice, nicely done. That's the good foam, by the way. It's not the cheap kind of styrofoam. This is reusable and very solid. Well packed, and I will take the case out, put it right here. So nothing else in the box other than another piece of foam that it's protecting it. Overall, that's the whole protection. I'm very curious, and just word of advice, the case price is a bit more than ours. Of course, you're gonna get electrified if you are playing with that plastic. But what we have right away in front of us is a case that has 4 sides, very thick, I think 4mm tempered glass. We have a glass front, glass top, 2 glass sides, and the issue I saw on the pictures, and I'm seeing right away here, is actually they positioned the top 20mm fan to be an intake, which I think it's a big mistake. As we know, heat rises, so I'm gonna have to reverse that fan and put it the other way around to exhaust. We don't want that one to be intaking because we have the front to intake. And speaking of the front, with this highly reflective glass, I'm gonna first try to get all the glass out and kind of show you exactly what it is. We have actual metal aluminum handle right on top, which is a very good thing to see. But let me go ahead and take these glass off, at least the side panels, to show you a few things on the front intake first before we take that off. Nice big thumb screws on the side of the panels. They're kind of all around, top, front, bottom as well. Of course, be careful when you're removing these glass panels. Being very thick is good, but if you hit them, they might shatter. And another good thing is they actually applied the plastic protection, not only on the outside, but on the inside as well. So whenever you're ready with your build, you can just peel these off and you'll be good to go. So let me rotate that real quick and show it to you. So a few things right here to mention right away. You will see the gap between the front fan and the glass is about maybe 3/4 of an inch. So is this enough? We're gonna have to test and see, but it's not completely choked. Ideally, this front glass I would have loved to have as a mesh, but I know that a lot of people consider that as a luxury, having that glass and all that stuff. It's just functionality wise is not the best option. There's pretty good gaps here on top, about an inch, and on the bottom as well, where a lot of air is going to come in. But again, that air is not going to be filtered in any way. So all that dust that's going to be accumulating and sucking in, it's going to be dispersed across your motherboard and all the rest of the internals. So you better manage to keep your environment very dust free, or have to dust off the case pretty often. Let me go ahead and remove the other side panel. So this one is kind of a dual chamber case, and being a dual chamber case, you know how it is. We're gonna have one side motherboard and the rest of the components on the other side, where we power supply and SSD drives or hard drives will go. So that's one of those designs that a lot of people like. I personally like as well. We have a room for another 120 millimeter on the bottom, which is very interesting. The case is raised about 1.5 inches from the desk or floor. Hopefully you're not putting it on the floor on a carpet, because that's going to just suck up all the dust inside. But on the back, you will see we have a regular 7 slots for the motherboard, and right here we have a space for 80 millimeter fan. And this is very interesting because exhausting wise it's not going to do much because it's placed lower. This is going to be an inverted motherboard, as the slots are on top and the IO shield plate is going to be on the bottom. So what I can do immediately thinking about it, I'm going to place the 80 millimeter fan as an intake to blow straight in over the components right here, the VRMs. So that can help for intake, but as an exhaust, it's not going to do much to you. And let me take this top glass off as well. Like I mentioned, four glass sides. You got to be extra careful not to crack any of these, because they're going to be hard to replace. You're not going to be able to find these. I was talking about this case, the price is around $120, $130. So it's kind of on the expensive side, considering that you can get a huge case or a much more or a well-designed airflow kind of case from a well-known brands like, you know, Cooler Master or Fantex. You can get them for less than $100. So paying a premium for this one, it's got to be really, really good. I think at $130, the Lee & Lee 011 Dynamic is around that price. So that's a steep competition right there. You gotta, Coolman has to have some really interesting and like compelling things that nobody else has. And so far, I'm not seeing that. On top, there's plastic. Plastic is on the bottom and on the top. The frame itself is metal, obviously. Feels pretty solid. It's not the thickest that I've seen, but it's still pretty solid. Not anything bad. Back, again, I'm gonna go back to these 7 slots. There are those that you punch through and there's no mesh. So this is cheap cases that are sold for like $40, $50, $60 tops with these kind of plates. If you're selling a product for $115, these should have been mesh, reusable, and not these punch through ones. Again, like I mentioned, this top intake fan, I'm gonna reverse the other way around, so to exhaust, and I'm going to reposition the camera a little bit so you guys can see a little bit more details. This is what I'm talking about, the top. It's kind of mimicking brush metal, but it's not. This is plastic. The glass is resting on these quite significant rubber isolators, which is very good. I like to see that. But again, this top 200 millimeter fan needs to be flipped around. We don't need it to push air in, we need it to exhaust, because that hot air that it's going to be accumulating inside needs to go somewhere. And this is the first thing we're gonna modify, so to speak. Right in the front of the case, you'll see we have the 2 buttons, power button, reset button, and we have 3 USBs, which only the far right one is USB 3 and the other 2 are just regular USB 2s. I think that's a mistake. Should have been the other way around. We're using more USB 3s nowadays and not USB 2s. And then we have dedicated headphone and microphone jacks, which is good to see. Overall, this is, you know, that plastic, it looks kind of cheapy. Power buttons as well. Handle is good, like I mentioned. Metal, that's good. I'm gonna remove that front panel as well, kind of strip all the panels off from the case so we can have a better look on everything we need. All right, and now this is the front of the case. Without all the glass, it's extremely light, super light. 200 millimeter intake. There is no room for replacing it with 120s or 140s. That's what we have, only the 200. I think it's significant enough. The obstruction behind it is kind of big, especially on these bars. That should have been thinner, so hopefully it pushes more air than it shows to be. And then if I flip the case all the way around to the bottom, you'll see we have another space here to install 200 millimeter fan. How we're gonna place it though, that's kind of interesting. It has to be inside because if you put it outside, there's not enough clearance. And then the feet that the case is resting on is just these glued on foam pads. It's not rubber. So again, that's another cheap element that I think would not cost them too much if they put some real rubber there. And then if I go back on the back side, what you're gonna see is the 7 slots for graphics cards and peripherals. And then we have the 80mm fan. And now let's look at the chambers. If we look at the chamber, that is the one for power supply and storage. So power supply will be going here. And let me take this plastic bag that has all the extras. What we have is 4 zip ties and the rest of it is the screws. Well, 5 zip ties, I guess. Nothing really to write home about. This is pretty modest. And let me look at this instruction real quick to see what they're saying here. They're saying that actually you will be able to install a 240mm radiator in the front. I personally don't see how that's gonna happen. Let me flip that again. You can see the holes, yeah, they're punched through for 240mm radiator, but there's no perforations. So how is this gonna happen? How are you gonna push air through it when you have a small cutout that's probably covering what's half of that radiator? So no, don't do this. Do not install any 240mm radiators there. They're saying there is a 200mm radiator option. Well, if you find a 200mm radiator that can be mounted straight in here, great, but that's not going to be AIO. It has to be a custom. And the rest of the instructions is all pretty much in Chinese. We're going to have to look at the pictures and figure it out. Right here where the power button is, hopefully the camera picks that up. Let me see if I can reposition a little bit. You can see still the glue right here that they glued in the LEDs. So overall, not the best quality work, I would say. But back to the chambers. So if we look at the back chamber first, we have this plastic kind of support where we're gonna be able to install our NVMe drives and ISSG drives and all that stuff. These 2 fans, the top one and the front one, are actually connected with our worst enemy, the Molex. Yeah, this is this is interesting. Why would you wanna put Molex at today's day and age? I mean, that should have been SATA at least. That's not good at all. And then we have these connectors for the RGB. They're interesting 2-pin connectors, which I'm really not familiar with what kind of motherboard will control that unless you have a special controller. Let me flip onto the main chamber. And on the main chamber, we have the stack of cables. We have the USB 3, the USB 2, we have the power and reset, and we have the front audio. So basically just the regular cables we have in pretty much any case. The room inside is pretty significant. I gotta see what's the maximum length of graphics card you can get over here. So if I measure the maximum graphics card from the front here to kind of the back, is I would say no longer than 30 centimeters. So 30 centimeters should be your cutoff. Considering that NVIDIA's Founders Edition of RTX 3080 is 28.5 centimeters, so you'll be able to fit that here, no problem. But again, don't go above anything above 30 centimeters. You're not going to be able to fit inside here. Anything shorter, obviously, will be fine, no problem whatsoever. Standard ATX motherboard can fit in here. You can have micro ATX, mini ATX, and that's about it. You have pretty good cutouts on the bottom. You got pretty good cutouts on the back. No rubber grommets. Again, cheaply done. In my opinion, for that kind of price, you should have rubber grommets. And just what really bothers me in the front, where they mounted this 200mm fan, this part right here, it's too wide. This is going to be obstructing a lot of the air. And realistically, you're getting just a portion of that air pushed into the main chamber. And a lot of it, well, maybe 1/3 of it will be pushed on the back. You really don't care about, and you shouldn't care about, because what's in the back is drives. They don't generate that much heat, and power supply, which power supply will have its own ventilation. So that's that's not really an issue right here. Right away, I'm just gonna flip this fan around. You should not keep it that way. And word of advice, if you get that case, you should flip it right away because you need that hot air to exhaust. You don't need that hot air to be pushed inside and recirculated through the motherboard and everything else. You need an exhaust. Hot air rises. That's how thermodynamics work. Long screws right there for that 200mm fan. And then we can take it off. There's not much branding on it. It's just both sides is Coolman's logo. What we need to do is just flip it around, push back the cables and leave it like this. Yeah, hopefully it's not gonna hit any of the metal, because if I push any of the blades down a little bit, it hits them. That can be remediated if we put some, maybe some washers, some rubber washers right here, but we'll see. We'll test that and see how it works. It's definitely not going to look as pretty as the other way around, but it's going to be functional, and functional is what you need when you try to cool off the internals of your case. Another negative here is you're not going to be able to install any AIOs. AIOs are very popular. Pretty much everybody's using them. I've been using them for over 10 years now, since the original Corsair H50 came out. But because I'm a little bit concerned that these blades might hit the bottom of the frame, because slight pushing down and they are already catching, I'm going to put some rubber isolators or kind of washers between the base and the actual fan to raise it up a little bit, just a tiny bit, to have a better clearance, and then I'm gonna remount it back again. So with the fan reversed now, I installed rubber isolators between the fan and the chassis. It's not hitting the frame at all. This is how this setup is going to be, but I wanted to show you a few other interesting things in the back where this chamber is. I just popped open a brand new power supply. This is the Enermax marble bronze, 750 watt, 80 plus bronze power supply, brand new, never used it. You will see how much space you have here. Actually plenty of space for cables, especially if you have a fully modular or partially modular power supply like this one. You're gonna have a lot of space, but I just wanted to test these fans, so I connect them to the Molex and have one of those convenient attachments at the end of the 24 pin that once you plug in the power, it's gonna start spinning. So I want to connect it and see what kind of noise we're gonna get out of these fans. Is it gonna be super noisy or not? And are we gonna get any kind of decent airflow? So let me see if I can plug this power supply in. And here they are running. Now the top fan is pulling the air out of the chassis and pushing it away. And I have to say, it's quite noisy. I don't know if you guys can hear it, but it's making quite a lot of noise. So let me see if I can put the top glass on. The noise even amplifies because it's now obstructed. Air is only coming to the side. So you can hear, let me get closer with the microphone, you can hear. This is with the glass on, and this is with the glass off. Unless you find a way to regulate the RPMs of these fans, they're gonna be quite noisy, especially with the glass on top. Which realistically, if you're using this case, you should completely remove that top glass to kind of have the air unobstructedly leave the case. The front, not as noisy, and we're getting we're getting a decent amount of air getting pushed inside. We're getting some air right here in the back for the drives as well from that portion, and some of the air is coming here as well for the power supply. They're really not that necessary, but that's what they did. And the top portion here gets pretty well ventilated, and actually half of that fan on top is exhausting the air that is from this chamber, which I'm assuming is not going to be that much, but still it's worth mentioning. It's an interesting design. I'm gonna do a full build on this case and measure temperatures obviously, but for now I just wanted to do an overview and see how things are done in this case, and what needs to be improved and what is actually good in here. And this is how the main chamber is going to look. We're having pretty decent air coming in from the front fan, and obviously we have quite a lot being exhausted on the top. But yeah, we're gonna test everything fully, and I'm hoping that this power supply is not going to interfere with the back plate of the motherboard because it's raised a little bit, maybe 4 or 5 millimeters right here. That might not be an issue, but if you have like a thicker back plate, that might interfere. We're gonna have to test that and see. But yeah, cutouts are good for the cables. We're gonna do a full build and see how that's gonna work out for that. So next topic, 2.5-inch drives, and this plastic kind of bracket houses two 2.5-inch drives and one 3.5 hard drive if you want to. So they're kind of slotted this way. The 2.5-inch drives go like this, and because this is thin hard drive, it's not gonna sit properly, but 2.5-inch drives go this way, and then the 3.5-inch drive, the hard drive, goes this way. So if you want to have these drives installed like this, they can be right here. But yeah, I think it's a pretty smart decision. Put it this way. I don't know if they're going to be completely isolated because the space seems a little bit bigger than normal, but you're gonna have to figure it out how to kind of isolate them more, because these slots seem a bit wider, made for like the older style SSD drives. Even the 2.5-inch drives today, SSD drives are thinner. And for the hard drive, it's going to be fine, no problem whatsoever. And if I flip the case around, now you're going to see how an 80mm fan is possible to be installed. And like I mentioned earlier, personally, I will put this 80mm fan as an intake. So on the other side, right here, where the IO shoe plate is going to be, this is going to be intake for me. So I can mount it in the inside, fits 80mm fan perfectly right here, install that, and this 80mm fan is going to push some air over your VRM components, because you're not going to get a lot of airflow just from the front intake fan, and that way you're going to have some air pushed in through the back as well, and then the top will have to exhaust all that. So this one is kind of noisy. The other thing is just disconnect it completely and leave the air come out passively once we remove that fan. Now if we look at the front buttons real quick, they're kind of weird. The reset button sounds fine, but then if you click on the power button, listen to this. Yeah, I'm not sure about all that sound. LEDs are pointing up, which is okay, I guess. Let's move on to the conclusion with this case, and obviously we're gonna do a full build. I'm gonna put a motherboard, graphics card, and everything else inside, and see how the final thermals are gonna be. But my fears and suspicions are they're not gonna be great. But yeah, we're gonna see at the end how it's gonna stack up. Let's go to the conclusion. All right, conclusion time. So what do I think about the Coolman Gorrila after my initial impressions and overview and look around the case? Mixed feelings, but most of all, a little bit disappointed with some engineering decisions they made. With the 200mm fans running on Molex, top fan, reverse to push down air where we know air climbs up and we need that air to be extracted somehow. So we need to reverse it. The noise is a little bit too much that I would like it to be. 4 glass sides is great, it looks very nice, but is it functional? I don't think so. Not as functional as many other cases that are a lot cheaper. And most of all, that kind of revolves around the price tag. At $120 to $130, this case has a very steep competition from variety of cases that you can get much cheaper, almost half of the price of this one, to even the same price but much higher quality like Lian Li cases. I mean, I'm gonna throw you an example. If you get Fentex P360A, that's a $69 case, almost half of the price of this one, and it's exponentially better, not only on airflow, functionality, brand name, and price, but it's just overall easier to build in. In this case, it's kind of nice that it's unique, it's different than anything else, but at the same time, I feel like they could have done a lot better job, especially for the money they ask. I mean, punch through IO plates in the back. We don't want to see that in a $130 case. We want some kind of a option to install an all-in-one liquid cooler. This is impossible. On the front, they give you the holes for installing the 240, but the radiator is going to be severely obstructed by the metal frame. There is no way to get a better airflow. So yeah, I mean, I'm gonna do a full build to see actually what kind of temperatures we are gonna get, how it compares to some other cases. I mean, if you look at the AR900 on my channel that I reviewed a couple months back, this case is absolutely amazing. Perforated mesh front, 3 fans pushing ample amount of air through the motherboard. All the components are running completely cool. Here we have 200 millimeter, which is fine, pushes plenty of air inside, but then on the back you don't have anything for exhaust unless you put this 80 millimeter fan, like I told you, to pull in some fresh air inside. That way all the air you're pushing from the front and the back is going to escape the top, but then the top fan is very, very noisy, especially if you put the glass on top like it's meant to be. It's just creating more noise. A couple of very good things that I'm seeing is the power supply. You can have as long as possible power supplies here with no obstruction, with no problem whatsoever. Drives, you can mount easily 2 big 3.5-inch hard drives, easily 2.5 SSD drives, and you can kind of stick a bunch of them in the back if you really need to with double-sided tape, so that's fine on my book. But graphics card, maximum length 30 centimeters. These days, a lot of graphics cards are above that, so you are limiting yourself again with this case. Bottom feet are not rubber, they're just that foam. There's a cutout for 200 millimeter in the bottom, but you cannot easily mount one. You cannot mount it inside because it's interfering with the back of the motherboard tray. On the bottom, you're gonna have to remove pretty much the whole plastic cage so you can screw that fan on, and I'm not even sure how that's gonna work out because it's obstructed on one side. So pretty much this opening is for passive ventilation, I would say. So yeah, I think for $130, don't do it. There's a lot better and cheaper options out there. If this case was $60, I would say, yeah, maybe, just to be different. You can definitely get it, do some modifications yourself and kind of enjoy something different. But other than that, I don't think so. That's pretty much it for now, guys. Hit the thumbs up if you liked the video. Stay tuned to the channel. Subscribe if you're new. Hit that bell notification to get notified for every new review coming your way. If you want to support this channel, check out the links in the description of this video. And until next time, guys, you have a wonderful day.